In years gone by, this is how I, as a widow, would have been portrayed. Veiled and shrouded in sadness, a widow was to be seen but not heard, silent but strong, as they carried the burden of loss for family and friends for a set amount of time as dictated by culture, religion, society, and men. Historically, there was a timeline and a guideline for a widow's grief. Well, we can forget all of that. Hello, I can see you now. My name's Tabby Kerwin. I am a published coaching psychologist and a widow. And widowhood made me happier. I'm here today to tell you a different story of widowhood and grief, a story that encompasses a roller coaster of emotions but has zero timelines and guidelines. And at the center of the story is one key theme and learning for all of us: permission to choose how you feel. And spoiler alert, you don't have to just choose one emotion at a time. And tears and laughter are permitted. Let me take you back a few years. On the 7th of November 2018, I visited my husband Simon in Leeds St James's Hospital, as I had done every day for the previous month. But for the last 3 weeks, Simon had actually been in an induced coma, a complication following treatment for a germ cell tumour, a cancer that was actually being treated for cure. But on this day, something was different, and I intuitively knew it was the day my life was about to change forever. Now, Simon was only meant to be in that coma for 48 hours, but 3 weeks later, here we were, him lying incapacitated with machines breathing for him, and me wondering what the future held. Every single day, I would ask what more could be done. But whilst the reality was, there was little else doctors could do, I held on to that hope and possibility that he would pull through this. After all, he had beaten the cancer. The once large tumours and visible lumps had all but disappeared. Now, he was just caught out on a treatment-related technicality. But I knew I just had to trust my gut instinct that one day I'd know no more could be done. Well, the 7th of November 2018 was that day. I don't know what it was about that day, but as soon as I walked in his room, I knew it was the moment I had dreaded. I had further conversations with the doctors, and they advised the best thing to do would be to reduce the levels of mechanical support on the many machines keeping him alive. Simon had only been diagnosed 4 months before this, but in that time, he'd had about 50 rounds of chemotherapy in a 12-week period. But it was a ventilator-associated pneumonia that was the final straw for his body. So, later that night, I took my time to say my final goodbyes, and not 5 minutes after those machines were switched off, Simon lay in my arms. We listened to the music that he had composed for our wedding. And at 8 p.m. on the 7th of November 2018, my brilliant husband, Simon Kerwin, took his final breath, and I had the privilege of holding him as he did. Okay, right, does anyone want a tissue? Are we all good? I've got one, just in case. Hang on. Okay. So, I'm not here just to tell you that sad story of Simon's death and my grief. I am here to show you that from the hardest of times can come possibility, hope, and strength. I am living proof that you can blend joy and sadness, and emotions can and must coexist, and that you can prepare for the hardest of times and protect your mental health as you do it. I may now be a widow, a label I did not carry comfortably at first. And whilst the sadness of Simon's death will never dissipate, the version of me that stands here today is, without doubt, the strongest, happiest, most resilient and ambitious version of myself, not because Simon died, but because he lived. Now, this wasn't my first rodeo with grief. I was 16 when my dad had died of cancer, and at that time in my life, I was not given the space or support to grieve in the way that I needed. And consequently, in my 20s and 30s, I lived with episodes of depression and anxiety. I really thought it was Simon coming into my life that helped me to cope and to recover, that his being there was the reason I survived those years. But what I quickly learned when Simon died was it wasn't because he had been there with me physically. It was because he had equipped me with the tools and strategies to be stronger and more resilient, independent of anyone else. He had left me with the greatest gift, the tools to be emotionally strong and mentally free. When Simon died, it should and could have been the moment that I crumbled, unable to go on. But what actually happened was, it was the moment I started to thrive. Could widowhood make me happier? Now, let's get one thing absolutely crystal clear right now. I am absolutely not happy my husband is dead. Okay, that is not the subtext of this talk, okay? I'm also not that thrilled with him that he's not here today to hear me give this talk, being as, this has been a bucket list thing for over a decade. But I am acutely aware that Simon's death and story have given me the in to be on this stage today. So, for that, thank you, Simon. But the truth is, widowhood has made me happier. So let me explain. Widowhood has given me permission to be me. Truly, authentically me, without fear of judgment, the version of me that most aligns with my visions, actions, and goals. Because what I have learned is emotions can and must coexist. Joy and sadness can meet in the same moment. You can cry whilst you laugh. You can miss someone with every fibre of your being, but still be excited for what comes next. And you can choose which emotion you lead with. For so long, we have been conditioned to believe at a societal level that grief means we have to wear just one physical or emotional colour. That in order to honour a loss, we have to be sad, lost, or heartbroken all the time. But grief isn't a prison. It's a landscape. And within that landscape, there are deep, deep valleys of pain. But there's also huge mountains of possibility. I know, I've climbed them, metaphorically and literally. In fact, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro a few years ago taught me more about my grief than absolutely anything else. Because when you are stripped back to your rawest core, you have two choices. You can stay in that deep valley of pain, or you can choose to climb that mountain. I dared to climb the mountain of grief. And I started by asking myself one simple question every single day. How do I want to feel today? And some days, the answer was, I want to cry in the shower, I want to eat Chinese prawn dumplings in bed and watch Grey's Anatomy. Very specific, I know, but also highly accurate up until, actually, yesterday, to be honest. But, But other days, the answer was, I want to move, I want to laugh, I want to live, I want to feel. Grief and happiness are not opposites. In fact, I would say my grief has given me access to a deeper form of joy than I have ever known, because when you have seen how fragile life is, when you've held a body in those final breathing moments, you gain a greater appreciation for living, and you start to dream bigger. You start to align what really matters and creates your purpose. So, in the same way that Simon gifted me the tools to be emotionally free and mentally strong, let me gift you 3 simple ways and steps that you can take every single day to protect your mental health for when those hard things happen, because they will happen. Firstly, acknowledge every emotion. Instead of saying to yourself, I shouldn't feel this way, extend yourself the love and kindness that allows you to feel all the emotions, however comfortable or uncomfortable they are. Secondly, choose which emotion gets the microphone. Just because the sadness of grief is in the room with me today doesn't mean it gets to run the show. This is my TEDx talk, so I'm going to choose joy and empowerment to MC, not sadness. And thirdly, act in alignment. Take the purposeful actions that advance your vision. My vision? Well, that's for me and for you to be able to live fully, to grow with grief and protect mental health. And that means everything that I do supports that. When I took this veil off at the start of my talk, I wasn't just making a statement about widowhood. I was making a statement about choice. This veil, it isn't just a piece of fabric. It's a symbol for all the stories, rules, and expectations that we tell ourselves. The stories that tell us how we should feel, how we should behave, who we think we're permitted to be. We all have veils. For some, it's the veil of, I'm fine, thanks, even when we're crumbling inside. For others, it's the veil of perfection, the belief that we have to have it all together all of the time. And for some of us, it's the veil of fear, the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of what other people will say if we dare to do something differently that makes them feel uncomfortable. Yeah? You can't fully dream, dare, or do until you take off the veil. Until you allow yourself to feel everything, not just the emotions that are comfortable or socially acceptable. When Simon died, I could have kept my veil on. I could have stayed the quiet, grieving widow who just existed, but I didn't want to exist. I wanted to live, so I chose to thrive, not just survive. I dared to ask myself, how do I want to feel? What do I want to do? Who do I want to become now that life has turned upside down? And what version of me honors Simon, but most importantly, honors myself? And the answer was loud and clear. I want to be the woman who lives fully, the woman who chooses joy with tears on her cheeks, the woman who aligns her values and her actions, and the woman who grows with her grief, protects her mental health, and performs at her best, because that is where real freedom lives. I am allowed to hold grief in one hand and joy and gratitude in the other. I am allowed to choose happiness without guilt. And so are you. The only permission you need is your own. Now, if there's one key thing I have learned in all my years of growing with grief, it's that happiness is a choice and we can choose to create it. But that choice is in the small moments, the clothes we wear, the books we read, the food we eat, the people we spend time with, and the places we go. Emotions are not a permanent state. They're not a fixed destination, but a choice every single day, and you get to choose which emotion you lead with. Because life will have challenges for all of us. Heartbreak, loss, failure, loneliness. But the power to choose how we meet those moments, that power belongs to you. Do we keep that veil on, or do we take it off, stand in our truth, and choose joy anyway? Widowhood made me happier. Not because I lost the love of my life, but because Simon's death reminds me every single day to live my life fully. Simon's truly fulfilled life, his career, his music, his love, his never-ending bad jokes and sense of humor, right up until the moment he was sedated into that coma, it all taught me that happiness is not something we wait for. It's something we choose moment by moment, even in the middle of pain. So if you take one thing from my story today, let me remind you of this. You don't have to wait for a tragedy before you give yourself permission to choose happiness, to dream, to dare, and to do. Dream bigger than the life you are already living. Do the things that make you feel truly alive, even if they scare you, even if people don't understand, and definitely do them if people judge you for it. As a good friend of mine reminded me before they died, the opinions of others are not your concern. Because emotions can and must coexist. Joy and sadness, courage and fear, love and loss. But the power to choose which emotion you lead with, that power belongs to you. I stand here today as a widow, yeah. But I also stand here today as a woman who is truly, deeply alive, and it is my hope that you will leave here today choosing to live just as fully in the way that lights you up. Grief and life, they are hard for all of us. That's why I choose to create my happiness, why I choose to allow my emotions to coexist, and why I embrace the fact that widowhood has indeed made me happier. Thank you.